Hey everybody. All right, so we want to try something out. Maybe a little different. We want to go through Blind Spot, which is like a news. Um,
Oh,
how would you describe it?
yeah. So Ground News, they just have a feature where they show blind spots on both sides. I'll take my face off here so I can share this with you. But um, so they have a blind spot for the left and for the right, and these are the stories that only 20% of the left sources will talk about this story, and only 0% of this one. And for the right, there's 0%, 9%, and so but this is a whole tab of stories that on one side is hardly covered and the other side is hardly covered the other direction. So um it's just an interesting phenomenon in general. I guess that's what I want to talk about is the phenomenon of it, and we can maybe pick some of these stories and talk. Let me see if I can click this. Let me see if this helps too. It doesn't work. All right.
Yeah, it's going to be a little cut off for us, but I guess that we can kind of. Well, we're in our testing phase. You'll have to forgive us. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I can try to share this with you and see if that just works. See if you're able to receive it, and then just I'm not sure if it'll let you have it on. I gave you the link. I'm not sure if it'll give you because I'm signed in. I pay for this, so if that does, we can use your thing instead of me.
yeah, I don't know if I have it set up to where I can use or I can just like switch all my stuff over
Oh, okay,
to. Um,
okay. Well, we can look. Okay, so I can just move it. You know what? That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna move.
Maybe actually, if I do, I could switch. I could switch the. Let me
I
try
can move it
my
around so you can
my
see things.
other stream. Here we go. Okay, I
We
mean,
can
I
just
guess I got it. If you can kind of see in my other one, I can switch the to the other stream that has the stuff down here.
yeah,
Um,
okay.
so I
Got
could do
that.
that. Okay, we made it work. All right. Um,
So just in general, it is amazing how um I mean there is so much news in the world that you can't cover all of it, obviously. And that's why there is such a thing as a narrative, is because people have to try to discern what is really important, what has the most relevance to society. And so you have people of a certain political leaning that it's just natural that they would see things heading a certain direction and see the relevancy of stories that the other side wouldn't see because they paint a different picture of the future, a different trajectory. They think they mean different things. If they mean different things, they're not going to have the exact same value on the other side. It's just not. It just wouldn't work that way with a narrative in general. But that's why when you say there's the right think, I mean, not when I say I'm saying correct think type of idea, because the left wing controls most of the media, and so because of that, it's not that they're necessarily evil in intent. It's that, I mean, obviously we have the same type of thing with conservative media as well, but it's just that most of the ABC, NBC, CBS, they are left wing, and so there is a narrative that is common that is in its but it's through its relevancy according to what they think is relevant, and people that think differently don't find it as like here you're leaving a bunch of stuff out.
yeah. You know, because I the lens that I used to look through was very much predominantly through the left. I remember back in the day, even like prior to Trump, I would listen to Rachel Maddow. I thought she had a fantastic show. It was very interesting. It made a lot of sense. This is like we'll say like 2014 before Trump even got on the scene. Um, and she would kind of like the way that she would kind of craft these things together was really interesting because she would take fact points of things and she would kind of like string things together that would effectively ask questions. And I guess in a large sense she still kind of does that, but I guess the issue that I run into now with her is kind of like, well, I can see all of the holes that are that I can see all of the things that she's working with, all of these tools, and there's
Mhm.
so many holes in them, and she's ignoring so many other aspects that I just couldn't
Yeah.
even see prior. So I kind of go back and I think about the previous stories that she would talk about, and she would make a lot of it was kind of like conspiratorial type stuff of like,
Yeah.
here's these rich people who are over here and they're working in this, and they have their fingers in this, and this person is involved with that, and if you kind of think about it this way, then it's like, and it was this whole web of things, and it's like, yeah, I bet you there is something kind of going on.
So when you're thinking about conspiratorial people, I had a really good illustration that somebody mentioned. I don't know, and just in some of the vast media I listened to, they said, you know what, if to explain the mind of a conspiracy theorist, you say if you hear hoof prints coming down the street, a conspiracy theorist thinks zebras, must be zebras, right?
Mm-hmm.
And someone that's not that way, you think horses. Well, it's like, well, you can take the point of fact of like, sounds like a zebra. It's like everything zebra except for the fact that it's not a zebra, right? I mean, it's like it's a horse, but all the facts point to zebra because you don't have all the facts, but you have enough to be able to draw a line to zebra. Because look, it sounds like it's whatever. Maybe even it. I don't know,
Yeah.
whatever. I'm trying to think of more things you can say about the sound, but for just hoof prints. But the idea is that you can find thousands of facts in your favor and use those as a body of evidence to reach a conclusion that seems, well, of course, with all those facts, of course that's the
Yeah.
solution. And it's really easy to do that, especially if someone does it in a clever way, and if you have people that watch that want to just be fed information and aren't going to bother to look it up, which is most people. So you're just like, oh, well, I mean, she's on the news, she wouldn't lie, right?
Yeah.
And maybe she's not even lying, like
Or it's a
I don't know,
trusted source
right.
that they specifically trust in. Maybe not everybody does. And so like there's a fairly recent kind of conversation that I've been having with somebody. Um and it's in the lanes of conspiracy, and it's kind of it's almost mind-boggling to me, but I can see how people kind of get invested into these kinds of things. And the one that I got sent a video, and it involves Q proofs is what they call them. And so we all know QAnon and that the Q and all of that kind
Yeah.
of stuff, right? And so this one was like, here's a Q proof which is meant to demonstrate the insane amount of accuracy that these things are, that gets posted, these bits and pieces of
Yeah.
information that you can then kind of put together to paint a larger picture.
Right.
And this one was more specifically around John McCain and his death. And it was like, there's this Q posted this thing about John McCain with his hands up, saying, every dog has his day. And he posted it at like 7:28, and um, he died 30 days later, and 30 is a meaningful number with Q, and he and John McCain died at 3:28, and so you can see, and then 2 plus 8 equals,
Right.
and it starts in you're basically piecing together a lot of these coincidences that kind of um demonstrate the validity of it. And so I don't know if there's actually a real term for it. And I'm sure I've mentioned it before. I call it the Alex Jones theory, um, or the Alex Jones tactic is what I call it. And it's basically where you take a fact and then you connect it, and you say, here, look, you can see the fact. And then the viewer or the listener or whoever is in taking this information, they can go verify that fact, and then you say, see, and now this is what that fact means, and then you tie that to a series of other events, um,
Yeah.
that are also facts, right? But then you end up creating an entire story, which is a whole narrative, and now you're roped in, and now it's like, oh well, I have the evidence of it here
and
and here
and
and here.
and you have supporting parties that are sending you more stories that support your story, and
Right.
like, see, it's just more and more
It's like,
building
see,
upon.
see,
It's like,
look.
look, hey, look at this story, look at this right here, it's happening here in Canada as well, and it's, so it's just amazing how it gets away from us. But I do think there are responsible people out there that, editors and such, that, or producers or whatever it is, whoever decides what gets airtime. Um, I do believe that it is a politically, um, that they're politically motivated in general, because they also have to, appeal to their
To their
audience.
audience, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and part of the problem with a lot of the stuff is like, okay, here comes Q, and he's QAnon, and they're doing all their, you know, crazy nonsense stuff. Um, but then it eventually gets weaponized, and I remember there was a point in time with the whole QAnon, and I was kind of like, to me, QAnon is not really even a problem. I don't view QAnon as an issue at all, because like all they're doing, they're basically LARPing, um, and their whole message, like everything that they're going after and that they're investigating and looking into and blah blah blah, all this stuff, they're pulling on threads here and there, and it's all to go against pedos, right? And so it's like, okay, like I'm not tripping. That's not really a, to me, that's not really a dangerous thing. If they want to go around and they want to pull on things, but then it gets weaponized into being like, these are crazy people. You should never think like listen to them at all. They should be rejected on the whole. And not only that, because they support Trump, because they're in favor of Trump, you should also discard Trump for it. And so they kind of weaponize it to say, and they in a sense almost use the same kind of a tactic where they're like, these guys are the bad guys over here because they're wrong and they're just making stuff up, and they're, look at how crazy and silly they are, and they like Trump, therefore Trump and QAnon become one. And when you have people who aren't thinking about these kinds of things, they they associate the two as one, and they're not really, I don't know if it's that they're not capable of kind of separating the two, or if they're just kind of like, they don't take the time and effort using their brains to make that
Some
disconnection.
people also like to be angry, or
I think a lot of it is bored.
people like to be, yeah, well, I mean, like, people like
But
to
yes,
be furious at the opposition, and like, I don't believe these guys who do this. And so, it's one of the draws that some people like. I mean, I guess I do. I guess you can say, like, if you watch libs of TikTok on Twitter, I
we
guess
all
you can
kind of
say that.
engage in it, right?
Yeah, you can say it's like, I'm like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. I'm like, why am I punishing myself by watching? It's like, hey, people do their own content, do your own thing. I don't care. But why am I punishing myself watching this so that I can jointly make fun of it with everybody? I mean, I don't necessarily post anything to make fun, but basically all it's going to be comments of like, yeah, these people are crazy. It's like, well, it's amazing how that's what we want, and that's why they get clicks, and that's what they also want on when you're watching the news, that people want to be on the right side of history per se, or on the right side of their, like, whatever it is, like they like their newscaster. I'm on his side, we're on a team. Let's get those guys, that's they like to uncover the evils of the other side.
Yeah, and I think it's also kind of a little bit of like, both like I told you so, like they want the I told you so moment, and they want the like, look, see, you can see like I'm right.
Yes, that's true.
It's
That's
like a
true. I mean, and it's
confirmation
valid.
bias.
And, but it is valid to obviously want to be like, this is what I'm talking about. Like, this
Yeah,
is, I'm not going to just say in the ether that they do this. This is an example of such thing. So
yeah,
it is valid. It's not, there's nothing wrong with it per se, but it's interesting that we find so much enjoyment in doing so, that we find so much enjoyment in just owning, owning the
Owning
libs,
the
or
opposite
owning,
opposition.
yeah, whatever, the opposition in general. I don't know what, I'm sure there's an equal and opposite thing for what conservatives, or what liberals say about us, but I mean, I just know there's owning the libs is like a,
Yeah, owning the libs
like
has gained enough
it's like a
momentum to
meme type
to
of, yeah.
be a term.
So I'm sure. I mean, I'm trying to be even minded in all this. It's just that I have the exposures I have, and so
Right.
So
And
anyway, so this is, go ahead.
It's difficult because you kind of end up going down rabbit holes, and it reforms and recrafts, in a sense, like your reality. When you disconnect from one side and you lose that part of the narrative, like how they are interpreting things,
Yeah.
You effectively are, and you just find that one side, and you're like, look, this is so clear. And part of it can be that it is true that on this side there is more truth and there is more accuracy that's kind of going on in it. And when you look at a lot of the stuff, and it was a very interesting time during the entire Trump era, where a lot of the stuff, I mean, it was basically every day that something was coming out that had something negative towards Trump. Now, if you didn't pay any attention to what the right was saying, and you always paid attention to what the left was saying, and you just absorbed their narratives, it all connects, it all makes sense. And it's very much a lot like the Rachel Maddow, which is probably why she was so successful, is because she's just sitting there connecting these dots, and then telling you the story. So all you really have to do is just believe in the story, and you don't and all the facts and all those things, those don't really matter anymore. And then the contradicting aspects don't really matter anymore.
So I know the solution to this is to not have competing. Okay, so we need to have competing narratives. Like, it's okay to paint a picture of how you think things are, but then not to just completely demonize and try to discredit the existence of anyone that would believe otherwise, but to explore someone else's narrative. So why can't it? So there's a narrative that the right wing has for how they think the world is going, and what the path is, and is not embraced. So I feel like conservatives in our media, we talk about, when I say we, I mean me and conservatives, and I don't want to bunch you in there, but we do talk about the left-wing narrative as like this evil thing, but we do talk about what their narrative is saying. So we're at least acknowledging,
they do address and acknowledge
this is what they think. This is what they think, and we're going, we don't agree with it. And I think that there's only the smallest straw man version of the conservative narrative that they talk about. They take the easiest arguments.
They do QAnon.
Destroy. Right. Yeah. And they don't actually explore like, it's in very small doses where they'll even talk about, so they're doing this not because they're evil, but because they believe that this is the path forward, and this is whatever else. They'll use things like, if they're talking about conservative, they'll be like, because these antiquated old school type of ideas that are a relic of the past, and they say things that are trying to just completely discredit, and like, you just like get with the times. Use those ideas are old and tried, and they have no business here. We shouldn't even.
And they rope them in without proper justification. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I think that what the right does well, I think, is they do fairly well at more accurately representing what the left believes than the left does. The left, whenever I listen to people on the left and they're talking about any given topic, there's um one of them is there's the don't say gay bill.
Yeah.
Um is a really good example of like, I don't think that you guys are completely misrepresenting what this whole thing actually is and what it's about. And whenever anybody talks
That's
about
a
it,
little bit different because that is on purpose propaganda
right, but
because they're
that's what
trying
they
to win.
right, but
They're trying
that's
to win that argument in the state of Florida, and they're trying to make it go away. So,
right.
that's a disingenuous argument. But I think that there are
That's what they do
genuine
all the
arguments
time
to be
though.
had.
That's what they do all the
Yes.
time. You look at stories from Trump, like everything that happened with Trump. I mean, Trump says, "Oh, there's Boston or what is it? Baltimore is rat infested," and they turn it into some kind of race thing, and it's like it had nothing to do with it. Bernie Sanders said that it was rat
Right.
infested, right? And so it's not like it's just it's like little one-offs, or it's a in order to stop some piece of legislation or whatever it is. It's like everything. It's like if there's something that is even remotely related to, honestly, it largely started. I mean, there's aspects and levels to it from before, but it largely started when Trump became really popular. And they were like, okay, anything that Trump has anything to do with, or anybody that's associated with him, we're going to lump them all into this category. And that's effectively what they did. But it's not to say that the right has never done that, or that they still don't do that. There are, and I feel like we're in a big struggle to try to find the nuance in our conversations. Like we almost have to have conversations from a ground level, set definitions, set the boundaries of the things that we're actually talking about, remove labels so that we can't just sling things at people and say, "Oh, well, that's
Yeah.
fascist." Because whenever I hear anything that's a label, I'm like, you're
Yeah.
not talking about anything. You're just slinging labels.
And usually the labels are purposely trying to brand people into
Yeah.
irrelevancy. You're trying to, the reason why people get so, people use the word fascist is only because it is not proper anymore, or not proper etiquette to use Hitler or Nazism anymore. That's the
But there was a
closest thing they
time where it
can do.
was.
Right. So because that is deemed too far, now they're taking fascism, which they can loosely tie to that. So that's the closest thing they can get. What they're trying, they don't even know what fascism is, and it's actually
True.
kind of a complex concept, but it's not what they think it is. They, if you ask any of these people that say that, they would have no idea. They give you a nonsensical answer. They would say something like Hitler and Nazism and racism, or
Labels. It's just
they'd
more
say random
labels.
things, right?
Yeah.
So it's just, unfortunately, I guess that's why that one group came out that's been out there that Lieberman's a part of, the no labels crowd.
I haven't heard of that, but that
It's
on the
been out
face
there.
of it, it sounds
So
good.
yes, it does, except for it's just a way to,
Label others.
no,
You're a labeler.
I think it's a way to create more Bill Crystals. It's a way to create more Bill Crystals, and the journalist in the New York Times that's supposedly conservative is not. I can't remember his name anymore. It's let's all get along type of thing, and it's taking all the spine out of all arguments. In some ways, it's not.
How does it do that? I would think, because
So
I've been involved in spaces, I'll say, where you're not able to say that somebody is a Nazi or a fascist or a
So
pedo
the
or
no
whatever.
labels is different, though. It's not exactly that. It is the idea that it's supposed to have thinkers from both sides that are able to have honest discussions, and we're not using labels to describe things, or like it's almost like you having. If I were to give it, if I were to label it with the worst possible okay, it has a reputation for being just a bunch of squishy moderates that are just trying, let's all get along, like just accomplishing nothing, like just saying a bunch of words that is like no one's listening to. Um,
Hmm.
it it's it was a good idea, and I think that a lot of people in it have a good heart and were trying. Like I said, like Lieberman at one point was the only one that was being reasonable that I could see as a Democrat that I listened to at one point. Um, since off and on, I randomly see people, but like it's almost. I don't think it's almost not even the fault of individual Democrats at this point because they got it so locked down with Pelosi and Schumer that like it's almost like if you go off script one bit, you're fucking out of that committee. You're not, like they have it locked down where
Yeah.
like if you have the wrong tone, the wrong take on something, we need to unite in front. Like you don't have people just kind of. The only people that can get away with it are the people, the South Carolina guy, because he was like an independent, but he caucused with Democrats, or
Oh, I
what's
think
his
I
name?
know. I think I might know who you're talking
Yeah,
about.
but you don't have people like that inside the Democrat Party right now.
Yeah.
You don't. I mean, inside the conservatives, you have like 3 different factions, honestly.
So when you say the Democrat Party or the conservatives, are you talking the political class or are you talking about the people
Hmm.
class?
Oh, good question. I was actually talking about the political class when I
Okay.
was thinking about that. So when I talk about the people, that's completely different because I think that people are a lot more aligned, or at least would be a lot more aligned if they understood their, like if you have regular people talk to each other, I think that there's probably like a 60-70% overlap with what people think is true about the world,
Yeah.
um, and general approaches about how to treat people and others. Uh,
If it's face to face.
but then it's yes, and but most people don't take time to understand their own ideas or how they came to them. They just a lot of times, I mean, just like people can follow sports and not know anything about the sport itself.
Yeah.
They pick a team and they just trust this person. They don't want to put in the effort, so they just take their talking points or their understanding. Oh, okay, so I believe this because I'm a good person if I believe this. Got it. Shorthand version. I don't want to do any of the work. It's not necessarily because of a bad person, although I think we should have a culture that embraces thinking instead of just like existing and being like, I don't care about any of that stuff.
Yeah.
Because if you don't care about any of that stuff, who runs the world is the political class.
Right.
If
Yeah.
everyone is engaged on some level and these political people are just kind of like are they have power delegated to them and they have the 100% of the population as accountability partners for them to keep them in line, this works. But if people don't give a shit and all they care about is going to soccer practice and all they care about is whatever, just their own lives, I think that it needs to be more of a civic duty for people to understand something about what goes on. That's why I do like the ideas out there about the voting age and things that
Having to take the
Vivek
civics
says. Yeah,
test.
but I'm
Past
not
that.
necessarily. I don't want to go on Vivek again because I Vivek because I already go on about him a lot. But in general, I like the idea of putting what is like when you ask somebody what is being American, people are like deer in headlights stuff, and it means and some people just think that yeah, it shouldn't mean anything. It doesn't matter. Borders don't matter. I think it's good to have values and something to maintain or something to take care of and something that is there that is yours, that
Yeah.
like something to invest in.
To be proud of.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily that you have to it's not that you're a slave to a nation and to an anthem and you have to do the thing. It's more of a we together are doing this thing
Mm-hmm.
and we can do and what the result is matters to all of us. And I don't think that a lot of people give a shit about I don't know about all that. I'm just doing me. I'm just doing me. And I wish that more people were invested in what we are creating here as just a community of people.
Yeah, I think you made me think of something where it's where I think that what we're kind of lacking is when you think about America, like America is two sides of people. It's effectively two different groups of people or two different types of people. You've got the left and the right. And right now, and for a while probably, we have people who don't care about what the other people want. They just want what they want, right? And so I feel like there's really a balance in between. I think that the right needs to learn how to care about the things that the left wants, that the left cares about, and the left needs to learn how to care about the things that the right wants. Because when you don't have that, nobody's listening to each other. Nobody's going to um if I'm here to talk about, I mean, we're kind of at a point where if somebody learns a specific position that I have on a specific topic, right, I can just get dismissed for everything that I think about. For all my positions, it doesn't matter, he's the bad guy, right? And it's like, look, I'm interested in fighting for you on in these territories, in these grounds. I just think they go too far. I think it pushes beyond what we should actually be going for. I'm all for respect and all this stuff for these kinds of people, but like it seems like we're kind of overstepping certain boundaries here that I don't think is really healthy. And then it's just like, oh, you don't agree with this extremist aspect. You must be a bad person because these other people who maybe are more extreme on the other side, they hold they also hold extreme positions in their own realm. So it's once again the kind of like taking a person and just embodying them in a position or in a belief, and then just casting them out as if that is the
Yes.
whole of who they are.
Exactly. And you purposely, yes, you paint people as being evil and then saying we don't let evil participate in our society, and we
Right.
don't even want to regard those ideas because evil.
And at that point, you're not dealing in America anymore, right? You're
Yep.
dealing in two separate factions that are in effect
We're
warring,
dealing in
right?
a cold civil war
Yeah,
situation.
like a cultural, it's like a cultural divide. It's a cultural civil war, if you will. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's a shame, but yeah. So, anyways, I guess we don't have to go over any of these specific stories, but it's just as an illustration. I'm gonna put this back on the screen here.
Oh, here
There
I'll
is.
bring mine
You
up
got it?
so we got the full screen.
All right. So, like we have on the left, there are stories that 0% of the left covers, and 20% of the left covers, and on the right 0%, 9%. Going down here 0%, 0%, 14, 0. And you can tell, like when you see stories, who's seeing and who's not seeing it.
Yeah,
When you see, like, even if this didn't have a cheat sheet thing where he wasn't telling us the answers, you'd be like, yeah, I bet I bet they didn't report that here, I bet they didn't report that on this side. I purposely try to see stories that are talked about, and if I don't understand the stories that the left said, if I don't understand, okay, I know they're doing me dirty here, but I don't get it. I don't understand what they're saying here. Sounds horrible. Am I horrible? Is this something horrible that's going on? And then I try to look for something on the other side, and I try to say, all right, so let's look at my side. Let me see. Let's see what this, like, even I have to go to Ben Shapiro or whatever it is. I'd be like, all right, so they say this. What is the counter to that? What are they either not leaving? What are they leaving out, or what are they? Or what are they? What are they omitting, or what are they only seeing, or what are they trumping up, or what are they? is there any nugget of truth there? And sometimes there are nuggets of truth that I wouldn't have gleaned from my own conservative media.
Mm-hmm.
But it's amazing how much they don't overlap. It's amazing.
It really is. It really is. Yeah, I'm kind of seeing I feel like a lot of this stuff is it's narrative driven, as to whether they're going to cover it or not. They don't want. So I mean, for this one, for instance, is little support among voters for transgender medical procedures on children. 88% talk about it on the right. Right? Because this supports their position.
Right.
0% on talk about it on the left, because they don't want to touch anything that has anything to do with pro transgender.
I almost think that anything that is covered by 80%, 88% of the other side should be talked about, even if it's just talking about, hey, these guys are talking about this. It's like we find these stories important. These are the sides that the crazy people think are important, or whatever. Like the even if they're doing it in that way, I think it should be said like what they're doing, that shouldn't be a 0% number for the left. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying like the higher that number gets on either side, there should be some level of coverage on the other side because of how high it is on the one side. Because you should try to present stories that are of cultural, they're not just your narrative, but that are a part of one of the narratives that are out there. Like it's one thing if you have your own main set of things, but you should have a section that is highlighting things that are really big, kind of like things that are viral, that are like what's viral on the right should be showing up in left-wing news, and things that are viral on the left should be for all the right-wing news, if for no other reason that they are viral on the other side. And so there should be a familiarity of people on either side of the aisle with issues that the other side has. Like there should be some. It shouldn't be like, I've never heard of that before. There shouldn't be a situation of where like, what? The people that watch the news regular and then they don't know that some of these stories exist is just crazy. I mean, yes, there's only like 8% of people that nerd out like you and I, but we should be seeing without having to dig and look for it like this. Like I pay for this news service, for ground news, so that I can have it dished to me to know. They're not 100% right about how these leanings are, but it's way better than what I could do on my own. I don't know of thousands of publishers and where they are, but this is. I just wish it were. I wish it were something more honest. It's fine to have a take. It's fine to have a certain thing about how you feel things are, but to ignore that there is another side that thinks another way is just having a divided country.
Yeah, it kind of just like what this kind of shows in many ways is just the narrative drive, the narrative driving force. And as you can kind of see, it kind of goes both ways. I mean, for some of these where it's like, okay, here's Nikki Haley now tied to DeSantis in New Hampshire poll. George Santos might be getting ready to plead guilty. Like, this one is, I guess, more to be more pointed. Like, Gabe Amo wins Democratic primary in RI's first congressional district, tying that to Nikki Haley now tied. You can kind of see like left doesn't cover it at all, but the right does. And on this one, the left covers it, but the right doesn't cover it at all. So it's kind of like for these kinds of stories, I'm not too upset about it, because these are more stories that are for political parties. These are for the politically savvy people who are interested in the politicians themselves and how they're doing in a race, right?
So this specific story, because it has to do with the Democratic primary in Rhode Island's first congressional district, right? The smallest state, smallest impact, some random primary is even news for a Democrat. So like, you know what I'm saying?
Well, the
Like,
left covers it. The left is
right,
covering
they
it
did.
as like,
And
hey,
so
this is a big thing. But the
maybe
right's
they
like
can't.
this. They're like, we don't. They don't want to talk
Right.
about the wins of the other
There are some
side.
choice. So there are some, but this is not even a win. This is just a primary. Um, this is Democrats versus other Democrats. The result of
Well,
this.
I guess what I mean is when I talk
Yes,
about
in
wins, it's
concept
just
in
like,
general.
yeah, just
Yeah.
as
Yeah, yeah,
conceptually.
yeah. Yeah, in concept, yes, I totally agree. I think that not all stories qualify because, for instance, this 0%. I mean, that one you said at the top there that like this Democratic primary, that's arguable as to whether that's a story or not for anybody, honestly, because as a national news
But
story,
there's
it's more of
18
a
sources. I mean, you look at some of these other ones.
right.
This one has
Slow news
8,
days
10,
account for that
8.
type of thing. Yeah. So I'm saying slow news days, and it exists, and you that's fine. I don't have a problem with it. What I'm saying is that like, is that one that should is that one that should be shared? I don't know, but like for sure, the idea that they had that news story a couple days ago about like CNN actually had critical words for Fauci and questioned him on this mask study and stuff. Like that is everywhere with conservatives, right? But like is only on that one CNN. Is only on CNN that one segment, and no one wants to talk about it ever again on the left because, for one thing, it wouldn't do very well with their viewers. But I
Right.
think it. I hate that that's a thing. I think news shouldn't be just a place where you go to feel good about, you know,
The
like
thing that you want to feel good
right.
about, right?
There
Yeah.
should be news. There should be news. It's like, oh,
I
Fauci was
mean,
it's news that CNN even questioned him at all because they've been very kind
yeah,
to him,
right?
and
Yeah,
Fauci got angry.
when it's news that another news agency has covered a story is a pretty bad sign of where news is. Um,
Yeah.
but like kind of what I was saying is like these kinds of stories, I don't think really I don't care personally
Yes,
that these other that this story is not covered. Like this is just kind of like, hey,
right.
here's our own personal
That's what I'm
guys.
saying. I'm sorry if I wasn't clear. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that's
Yeah.
true, but there are some things. Well, there are some things.
Well, I'm making a separation
Yeah.
between stories that I think are fine to be talked about highly by one side and
Yeah.
not the other. And then I
The
find
issue.
other stories, such as little support among voters for transgender medical procedures on children. That's to
Does
me,
seem
that's not a political race. That's not
right.
politics.
That is a greater story. That should be a national news story.
Yes,
Yes.
that should be a national news story.
There's a thing that I mean, I'm sure it's an illustration from other people too, but Ben Shapiro uses the idea of if a story goes along with your narrative, it's a national news story, and stories that don't go along with the narrative are just local stories. So that's why we didn't cover it, because it's just a local story.
Well, that's
But
what they say.
but
That's
they're
what they
all
try to
local
say.
stories until you decide to elevate something to a national story for the most part.
Yep.
And so that's what justifications are, because what you do is you're trying to be like, that's just a local news story. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
but this is so that's how they justify it, and that's kind of annoying. So yes, I like when you have shooters of various types, you will always get the ones where black people are shot and killed by white people. You'll always get those on the news, and these other ones, like
Which
I
I
said,
think is really interesting because it's kind of in my lifetime it's relatively flipped. For me growing up, it was always if there was a crime, and this was like really early 90s. Like if there was a crime and it was committed by a black person, then that was showcased, right?
hmm,
And the ones that were done by anybody else were just not really talked about at all.
I didn't notice that type of thing. I wasn't aware of the idea of the narrative, and that the news was even as biased it was. I didn't 100% even realize that until probably, I don't
Early
know,
2000s is
15
when I
years ago.
realized it. But I noticed
Yeah.
it. I noticed it.
I never noticed it.
Yeah.
I always just assumed that, oh, this is the crime that happened, and I figured there's some algorithm for a reason why they're showing the story. I didn't realize it was all political at the time. I honestly thought of like that they were that like I was duped into thinking that news reporting was like this noble, awesome thing that people did.
That it's supposed to be. Yeah.
Right.
Because that's
But
a
now
presumption
it's
is that because that's the right way to go about it.
and the people that are actually like that, the people that are actually like that, that are good people trying to get the real story, trying to get to it, if it doesn't go along with the narrative, the editor just doesn't print it, and it's like, we need real stories or you're fucking out of here.
Yeah.
So it's not even necessarily, it just sucks. It's because it's just turned so political. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, we kind of have I think that there was a period of time where the right kind of had um more control over narratives. And I think that that was around the 90s to
so
early 2000s.
I don't, I think that didn't have control, but I think at one point
More influence.
was seen as, what I'm saying, there was more of a balance attempt. There was more of an idea of, we have to have balanced news. We need to try to show, even though it was tilted, it was like they're trying to, like, now it's just like, no one's just like, no, we're not even platforming
when Fox News started their 24-hour news cycle,
that
is
was like
pretty
95.
much, yeah, that's what I mean, is like 90s to early mid 2000s is when it all took place, because Fox kind of came out and they were like, okay, we're gonna do this, and then they basically grabbed national attention, is effectively what they did. And all of the other people, they weren't able to keep up with it. They didn't have any kind of structure.
Well, it's because they had 50% of the people focus on the one source, as opposed to everyone else was all the left sources were spread out. So that gave it a strategic advantage, obviously, to Fox to be so big. If it were already balanced with news sources, Fox News wouldn't have shot up so quickly at all.
Right. But I mean, there. And I think that now, effectively, where we're at is it's a battle of extremes. We're dealing with Fox News and we're dealing with CNN, MSNBC, and unfortunately, it's kind of like you had the left. Yeah, in the past, you had the left and the right gained dominance in the narrative, aspect of things, and then unfortunately, what then happened is that what didn't happen is that the left kind of came up and then they met in the middle and they figured things out. What ended up happening is, here we're going to take this network, this network, this network, and this network. We're going to give them all 24-hour news cycles. And so then all those completely shoot up. And in the entire process, it's a battle. So they're just like, all they're doing is just trashing each other. And then what ended up happening is, when the I'm sure that it's going to swap again at some point, but it's a tactic where what CNN and MSNBC and all these guys are doing is they're just ignoring anything that the right has to say, as if they don't even have a voice. And now we're kind of at a spot where Fox News is actually like, they are actually, like, they used to say fair and balanced, which was complete BS to me back then, but now it's like they're the only ones having right-leaning or left-leaning people on. They're allowing people to say whatever it is, in effect, what they want to say. They still have their super right-leaning things, and they push their narrative and all that.
I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of Fox News for the opposite reason, because they don't allow people like Tucker Carlson to be on. They don't want rabble rousers. They don't want.
That's a bit different, though.
For this type of idea, they want more of the the old guard. They want more of the old
Yes,
guard in there. And I'm just like,
they want the old guard as a headpiece, is what they want, right? Tucker was like, I'm not like he's like, I'm not buying into this whole Ukraine war kind of a thing, and that basically is like, whoa, 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 we don't want like we want to be on board with this. We don't want to have an alternate voice on that.
Tucker actually said that the FBI killed it because JFK. I'm like, holy shit!
I mean, he makes some pretty bold claims. He's making a lot of really bold claims.
That is I mean, that's always been a theory out there, but it's just funny that he would. It's very bold to be able to say that, and so that's why they partially got rid of him. Sure, but anyhow, I don't watch Fox News. I don't pay for cable. I watch Hannity and clips, and I'm like, oh God, I don't like Hannity. I used to like him some, but then even I was watching him with Hannity and Combs, I was like, stop pretending like this is like he's not just your pinata. Like it was just dumb.
He's
his ass kicked.
Hannity always came off to me as a very dishonest reporter.
He asked a lot of, have you stopped beating your wife? Questions.
Yeah.
He asks a lot of that kind of stuff, and it's like, it's not a matter of if he's right. If he does when he does his radio show, I listened to his radio show back when I was driving the truck. Sometimes I listened to it, and that stuff was all fine. It was just red meat for me, talking about stuff, talking about things that matter. But when he's sitting and trying to interview people and trying to play this journalist fair game, like, you're not fair.
No, and he's not honest about it either. And I think that there's a lot of people. The only person that I ever really saw on Fox News that would be honest when he was talking with other people was Tucker most of the time. He would have his opinions and he would push back and all this stuff, but I didn't find him to be necessarily grossly misrepresentative.
So
but he would mock, and he would kind of like he had humor in it, and you kind of had to understand Tucker's humor to see his points.
In terms of personalities, I mean, I guess if you're talking about the news section, I think the Fox News just hard news people like led by Bret Baier, and they had even Greta Van Susteren, was it whatever. I think they did just fine. I thought they had a good balanced news. They had good balance. They had more stories that right-wing people cared about because of their audience per se, but they tried to give good balance on it. It's when you get into the evening news, when you get to the talking heads, that's where it's
narrative driven.
It just depends, right? And so, but like even that, like Bill O'Reilly wasn't. I don't think he was terribly. He was annoying at times, but I think he did. It just depending on what night you watch him, whether you thought he's giving a fair shake to someone or not. Because sometimes he's like, I don't need to hear that because you're just doing like it's almost because he knows the like, you're just gonna say the stupid bullshit is part of the bullshit. I know you're gonna say, and sometimes that was good because he was getting to the nut of like, okay, this person's just bloviating, and sometimes he was just shutting them down completely and they couldn't get their ideas out. And it's just depending on the night for me when I watch O'Reilly. I thought O'Reilly did a decent job, honestly.
I couldn't stand the guy. I could not stand him.
I would imagine
he said he always came off to me as like grossly misrepresenting things. I would hear people talk like there were so many things that people could explicitly state their position, and then he would just turn it around and reword it into something that's completely different. And I feel like I saw that so frequently. And it honestly kind of reminds me of CNN and MSNBC, evening news today. It was just craziness.
I was in a different frame of mind then, so I can't exactly remember. My first me telling you about him in general is what that was my impression of with him at the time, is that he just he had a hard-nosed approach, which I appreciated, but he's kind of like a Judge Judy type of thing in some ways.
Yeah.
And so I kind of like, it's like sometimes it's nice to see him do it because some of these people need that type of finger in there, like and other times it's just like, okay, let him say something. Let him say something that is a
Yeah.
little bit, but then it's also dealing with the time because like you have a 3 minute segment and then there's commercial break and all that. So it's also because of that too. I would like to rewatch some of the stuff that came out back then with fresh eyes now because I was definitely in a little more of a bubble then, not quite seeing not understanding the narratives and that whole concept at the time. So
Honestly, anything when I was largely more introduced to him and Fox News and all that stuff was shortly after 9/11 and just prior to the invasion of Iraq.
mm,
And it was like when they were kind of going through the whole process of like trying to figure out, it was the time frame where they're trying to figure out if Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. And it, I would look at both sides, and for a while the left was like, this is just a sham, this is silly, this is crazy. But then they slowly moved over into the position of, yeah, we got to go do this, we got to do this. But the right, like Fox News, they were just like, hold on a second. Like when they're having conversations with people, the way that the conversation would go was like, hold on, you don't think that we should be defending America? You're okay with these people getting away with this?
that's
You
still
are
Sean Hannity now.
anti-American. It
That's
wasn't
still Sean Hannity now.
it's
Sean Hannity is all
it
about that
was
attitude.
it was the network. It was largely the network though. And that they had so much power and weight behind that narrative that it ended up influencing
So
even the left
the thing is, though, like
to
it,
just get on board.
I don't feel like it was that way with Megyn Kelly at all. I do feel like she was whatever
Tucker went in on it. I don't know if it was. I'm not gonna say, like, I'm not gonna definitively
I'm trying to
say
remember who the time
who.
it was. It was Hannity Combs and Megyn Kelly
Bill
um
O'Reilly.
and Bill O'Reilly. I think there's probably one more show in there, but then they did a repeat for then the next 4 hours of the exact same shows again in a
Sure,
different order.
sure.
Um, I can't remember what the other one was. I'm trying to think about how honest. I'm trying to think of honest. I can see how Bill O'Reilly rubbed people the wrong way. I could definitely see how Hannity with Hannity Combs. Oh, Hannity was infuriating on the TV. Honestly, I listened to his radio show. I had before I think even before Fox News, or maybe he wasn't there doing that before then. But I listened to the radio show, and I can enjoy the radio sometime. But I couldn't watch the show.
Yeah.
It was bogus.
It's. I guess, like, in closing, I think that something that we should try to aim to do, something that I've kind of, in a sense, made it a goal of for myself, was to try to understand other people and other people's positions as they view it, and then to also have my positions be understood by other people. Um, and it's a very difficult thing because a lot of what I end up running into is largely it's online. But what I end up running into is that, oh, you believe this position, you must be this, so then you get dismissed. Um,
The problem is that we're operating at too high. I want to say high of a level. I'm not trying to say like we're smarter.
extreme of
What I'm
a
saying is that,
mindset
like,
or
what I'm
something.
saying is that there are steps that people have to take before they're even emotionally and mentally available to have a certain kind of talk.
Right.
And so they haven't done the work to even understand the basics, the idea of that we have three branches of the government, that that we have a thing, we have even political parties, and that there's like they don't even know what the issues are or what the idea is and why they do like or don't like abortion. Like they just have they don't even on those overly
They're
talked.
told what to
They don't
believe.
even understand any of it. And so if we're trying to have this high-minded conversation with those people, it's never going to work out because we need to nurture a culture of where they give a shit.
So here's the problem, though, is that in order to get somebody to care about something, it has to be offensive, so that they can fight against it. That's all that anybody ever talks about. That's all that anybody ever cares about. Nobody talks about the triumphs. Nobody talks about the victories or accomplishments. All they talk about is this is a bad thing that's happening, and you should care because it's a bad thing that's happening. And
Yeah.
so they have, and so for them to do the actual work that it takes to understand other people is extraordinarily difficult, because of this roping into things, because otherwise you're not going to get anybody to care. They're not going to care to know about the three branches of government. They're not going to care to, know anything about the country. They won't care about borders. They won't care about anything, and the world will collapse around them because the people who are in charge, the powerful people, will be making those decisions rather than the people. So
we need people get involved in community with school boards and stuff.
yeah, people need to be just people need we need to find a way for people to care about things that are not hyper negative and extremes.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. Anyway, this is long. Let's wrap this up.
Perfect. We're like right at the hour long mark. So drop a like, hit the subscribe button, tap that notification bell. Make sure you catch the next ones. All right, you guys, take it easy.